Hello again and welcome from the deep into another episode of The Graveyard Shift with me, Book of Brett. Today we are going to be reviewing my first Steven Seagal movie. This is 1991's Out for Justice. I've certainly not heard a lot of good things about his movies, about him as a human being in particular, which we're actually going to kind of get into in this episode, because the way he is as a person directly correlates to why this movie turns out the way that it does. Now, Out for Justice is Steven Seagal's, I want to say, his like third or fourth movie, something like that. I didn't really kind of get into it that much. But in this, he plays a detective named Gino who is on the hunt for a guy named Richie who's mafia connected and ends up killing his partner in broad daylight. And that kind of leads me to the first thing that pops out while watching this movie is basically what you'd expect out of not only a Steven Seagal movie, but an action movie of A, this caliber, and B, from this era. Everything that you expect from something like that is in here. It's outlandish from the very get-go, from the opening scene where he goes and beats the shit out of this pimp, to the point where Richie is, killing people in broad daylight, some of them innocent civilians. And also all the scenes that Steven Seagal is in are pretty over the top in one way or the other, whether it be the action, the dialogue.
You like to beat up on women, is that it? Huh? Beat up on me,
his delivery, whatever it may be, this movie is over the top. And I kind of expected that. I don't really know what to expect out of a Steven Seagal movie other than it being over the top.
Doesn't this seem superfluous?
Now, I will be honest, I went into this expecting it to be absolutely terrible because Steven Seagal.
Steven Seagal is out of his mind.
But it's not as bad as I thought it was, although it's pretty bad. The dialogue is pretty atrocious.
I always wanted to be a wise guy. Look at us now under God.
Just riddled with cliches.
You talking to me, man?
Chock full of exposition. There's this whole dialogue with his soon-to-be ex-wife, who at one point in the movie, it's very clear that they're not going to get a divorce, or at least it looks like it. But this dialogue is a prime example of just exposition, just giving background on himself. And that's really how we get our character development in this movie, because there's really not a lot of character development to speak of. You go into this movie and there's a very clear-cut formula here of this is the bad guy, this is the good guy, how does it affect the good guy, and now it's a story of revenge and retribution, which I feel like is what a lot of these movies are. I mean, not just Steven Seagal movies, but you've seen it in John Wick, you've seen it in Bruce Willis movies, Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. There's usually an element of revenge to these movies. And I think that's because it's really the easiest way to put these characters in the situation that they're in without really giving too much context as to what's going on, both in the situation and with the characters. Now, the reason I picked Out for Justice is because I went online and I started looking up the best Steven Seagal movies, and I found an article written by someone, I believe their name is Eowyn, E-O-I-N, on theactionelite.com, and basically Out for Justice was just the cheapest one to rent. This was not something I had any desire to put a lot of money into. I was already putting my time into it, and I honestly, if I've got to be completely honest, if the less money I can give to Steven Seagal, the better, because I don't know if he's bringing royalties in off of this, but Steven Seagal's a pretty terrible person.
I beg your pardon?
You are like a terrible person.
For the last probably 20 years or so, he's been dealing with just sexual assault allegation after sexual assault allegation, so that's a lot of fun.
Dude, what the?
Now, this does also star William Forsythe, who does a very good job, actually. Maybe not a very good job, but for the movie that we're watching, it's a really good job. I like William Forsythe. If you never saw him, he played Manny in Boardwalk Empire. He is phenomenal in Boardwalk Empire, as pretty much everybody in that show is. However, In this, he's given a very different role. We have a very different type of movie. William Forsythe actually does such a good job in this that Steven Seagal cut a bunch of his scenes because he thought he was upstaging him. And he is, because Steven Seagal is Steven Seagal. He's a terrible actor, and William Forsythe is a professional actor. But Steven Seagal apparently had a ton of hands in this movie. I saw something about him having something to do with the music, which could explain why there's not really an ongoing theme with the music.
These go to 11.
It explains why this whole thing feels like a vanity project for him because he was one of the producers on it. As we all know, he is notoriously hard to work with on set, and the director, I can't remember his first name, but the last name is Flynn. Even he said that he was extremely difficult to work with. He showed up to set late all the time, which as a producer is kind of mind-boggling to me because your money's on the line, and on a film set, time is money. Not only did he have a lot to do with the backside of this movie, Warner Brothers was apparently sticking their hands into this movie left and right. We actually have a couple scenes that are just montages, and there are interactions between the characters with absolutely no dialogue. And it's because Warner Brothers wanted to cut a bunch of this movie to make it more time sensitive and more profitable. This movie is a prime example of people wearing hats that they have no business wearing.
Take off your hat. Take off your hat. Please take off your hat. Will you please take off your hat? Take off your hat!
Steven Seagal apparently had a lot to do with how the movie turned out, and it shows. It does show. The vast majority of this movie are scenes with him on screen, except when it's absolutely necessary to get the greater story across and show that, hey, there's something else going on other than his Aikido skills. The sad part about him getting his grubby hands all over this movie and Warner Brothers getting their money grubbing hands all over this movie is that somewhere in here there's actually a really fun film.
Thank you, dickhead.
However, this movie really actually made me start questioning what makes bad movies fun. This is something Mike and I talk about all the time, is these movies that we watch, some of them are outright terrible, but a lot of them we say are fun. And it made me think that in order for the movie to be fun, you have to have something aesthetically pleasing on screen, whether it be the kills, whether it be the cheesiness itself, whether it be the action scenes in something like this. You have to have something in there aesthetically that pulls you in, but there has to be something conceptually that really pulls you in. And this movie almost has that.
Oh, so close.
Had we gotten more screen time of William Forsythe, Jerry Orbach is also in this, and I know he's a side character, but I feel like if we had gotten more not Steven Seagal, then we actually would have had like a really fun movie. But as it stands, it's fun, but only barely so. Now, I did say that pretty much every ounce of dialogue and pretty much the script is riddled with cliches and stereotypes. The one that doesn't, though, that should have been a stereotype is the inexplicably close relationship Gino has with the mafia. And the whole idea behind this is there's a quote at the beginning of the movie about neighborhoods and how tight neighborhoods are, yada, yada, yada. Cops will generally be assets to the mafia, or at least they used to be in like the heyday of the mafia. But as far as I know, they're not friends and they're not nearly family. And Gino has this very like familial relationship with the local mobsters in this part of New York, and it just sticks out like a sore thumb. Again, it's one of those things that I can kind of push to the side, as with a lot of the dialogue, like in this scene where they're under the bridge and Steven Seagal just keeps going, "You got the balls, you got the balls, who's got the balls? Paul, you got the balls, you got the balls." And then the guy finally responds with, "Yeah, I got the ball." Like, dude, like we could have cut out half a dozen balls and had a normal scene here. I don't normally condone checking out and zoning out on something else while watching a movie, because you should sit there and absorb it and really get what the movie's trying to say. This is kind of like the Super Bowl, where you can get drunk, you don't have to fully pay attention to every little detail, and you're pretty much going to get the gist, and you're pretty much going to get the entertainment value that you signed up for.
What is going on with you? What are you talking about? You sound insane.
Now, you'll notice I haven't really said spoiler alerts, although I've given away a decent amount of details here. There's no spoiling this. You know what you're getting because you've seen this over and over and over again. What I was expecting going into it was bad writing, and we do get that in a variety of ways. Like at one point he gets this dog that somebody throws out their car window, and he takes this dog, we see it for a little bit, and then we don't see it forever, and then all of a sudden this dog just pops up into the movie again, and to me it appears like he's been sitting in this car the whole time, which, I mean, animal cruelty issues aside, wouldn't your car smell like piss and shit? It would just be covered. I mean, it's a puppy. This dog is going to do what it's going to do when it wants to do it. And that's never brought up. That stood out to me, as did the photo of Bobby and Roxanne that he shows to, I think her name's Tracy or Trixie, where it's this, it's supposed to be them having sex doggy style, but they're like posing for the picture like it's this Sears family photo. It's the weirdest thing. I really like to think that Steven Seagal spends his time thinking that all of his movies are great, that he's an amazing actor. I'm the king of the world! I choose to believe that, though I have nothing to back that up with, because he just seems like that kind of person.
Would you f me?
And the Steven Seagal to Steven Seagal marriage vanity cake would not be complete without an end credits montage of Steven Seagal. The end credits that I did watch, it was a good like minute or so of it. It's just him on screen, him from different scenes of the movie that you already watched. And there's Steven Seagal and his big, stupid, not Italian face. Overall, I can't in good conscience recommend a Steven Seagal movie, as I said, because of who he is as a person.
He's got a point.
Although from the point of view of cheesy action movies, I can say this is about what I expected. There was never a point where I went, oh, this isn't as bad as I thought it would be. And I think that's got to do with me trying to go into movies open-minded regardless of reputation or what I might have read about them. With that said, I can't also say don't go watch it because Steven Seagal is in it, because this is kind of where I take the stance on the whole canceling movies because of one of the people involved. Movies involve, especially big movies, involve hundreds and hundreds of people. Now, I would never say if a person involved with a movie goes and does something terrible and you don't want to go watch that movie because of that one person, I would never say that you're wrong, because I totally get that. However, I just take the stance on if a person was involved with a movie, that doesn't necessarily mean you don't go see that movie because of that person, because again, lots and lots of people are involved in making a movie. I think movies are one of the easier art forms to separate the art from the artist, simply because in that context, the artist is such a small, microscopic part of the entire project. With that said, if I were going to rate this, I would rate this on the basis of the movie itself as a whole, and as a whole, I would give this movie a 6 out of 10. It is fun. It does have its moments. If you like cheesy action, stuff like that, this is going to satiate that appetite. It's not good, but are we really expecting anything good from someone like Steven Seagal? So with that said, guys, if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you really liked it, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We try to put these out as often as we possibly can. We are growing. We're over 200 subscribers now. We want to say thank you to every single one of you that is subscribed, that's enjoying the content and keeps coming back for more. With that said, though, I will see you next time.